Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild had a grand dream, one that began to take shape on the rolling hills of Buckinghamshire, England. He pictured a house, not just any house, but a magnificent manor that would stand tall and proud, a jewel in the English countryside. This wasn't merely about having a place to live. It was about building something truly special, something that would shout to the world, "The Rothschild family belongs here. We are important." Ferdinand was a man of great wealth, part of a famous family known for their banking across Europe. But even with all their money, his family, being Jewish, sometimes felt like outsiders in English society. England in the late 1800s was a place where old noble families had been powerful for hundreds of years. New money, even lots of it, didn't always buy immediate acceptance. Ferdinand wanted Waddesdon Manor to change that. He wanted it to be a symbol, a grand statement that his family was not just wealthy, but also cultured, important, and truly English. He chose a beautiful spot, high up, where his new home could look out over wide, green lands. From this hill, Waddesdon would be seen for miles around, a beacon of his family's success. He hired the best architects and builders, telling them exactly what he wanted, a house like the grand French castles he admired. It would have towers, fancy stone carvings, and big, beautiful windows that glittered in the sun. Every detail had to be perfect, from the tallest chimney to the smallest doorknob. Building Waddesdon was a huge project like building a small town. Many workers came to the site, digging foundations, cutting stone, and hammering wood. It was noisy and dusty, but slowly, day by day, Ferdinand's dream started to become real. He visited often, watching the walls rise, imagining how the rooms would look when they were filled with his amazing art collection. He had spent years collecting beautiful paintings, sculptures, and furniture from all over the world. These treasures weren't just for him to enjoy. They were also part of his plan to show off his family's good taste and importance. Inside, the manor would be just as stunning. He planned for grand ballrooms where important guests could dance, elegant dining rooms where delicious meals would be served on the finest china, and comfortable libraries filled with books. Every room was designed to impress, to make visitors gasp in wonder. This wasn't just a home. It was a stage, a place where Ferdinand could entertain the most important people in England, from politicians to artists, and show them that the Rothschilds were not only rich, but also cultured and worthy of respect. For Ferdinand, Waddesdon was more than just bricks and mortar. It was a shield, a way to protect his family from the sting of prejudice. It was a key, he hoped, that would unlock the doors to the highest circles of English society. He poured his heart and soul, and a vast amount of money, into its creation. He wanted it to be so magnificent, so undeniably grand, that no one could question his family's place in the world. He believed that if Waddesdon Manor stood as a monument to their wealth and refinement, then acceptance, true acceptance, would surely follow. This dream, this enormous project, became the central focus of his life, a testament to his ambition and his yearning for belonging. He saw Waddesdon not just as a house, but as a legacy, a lasting declaration of the Rothschild family's enduring presence and power. He hoped that within its walls, he and his family would finally feel completely at home, completely English, and completely accepted. Waddesdon Manor, then, was more than just a big house. It was a carefully planned step in a much larger journey for the Rothschild family. Baron Ferdinand understood that simply having money wasn't enough to truly belong in the highest levels of English society. He knew that for his Jewish family, who had made their fortune in banking, acceptance was a tricky and often unfair game. The old noble families of England, with their ancient lands and titles, sometimes looked down on new money, especially from families like the Rothschilds. To overcome this, Ferdinand designed Waddesdon to speak a special language, a language of culture, history, and impeccable taste. He filled his manor with masterpieces of art from Europe's past. There were paintings by famous artists, delicate porcelain from France and Germany, and furniture crafted for kings and queens. Each piece was chosen with great care, not just because it was beautiful, but because it showed that the Rothschilds appreciated the finest traditions of European art and craftsmanship. This was his way of saying, "Look, we understand and value the same beautiful things you do. We are just as cultured, just as sophisticated." He also made sure the manor itself followed the latest trends in comfort and style. It had electricity, running water, and central heating long before many other grand homes. This showed that the Rothschilds were not just traditionalists. They were also modern and forward-thinking. When important guests came to stay, they would find themselves in a home that blended old-world grandeur with new-world conveniences, making their visit unforgettable. Ferdinand wanted his guests to feel utterly charmed and impressed, leaving with no doubt about the family's sophistication. Entertaining was a huge part of Ferdinand's plan. He hosted lavish parties, weekend gatherings, and elegant dinners. Invitations to Waddesdon were highly sought after. At these events, important people from all walks of life, dukes and lords, prime ministers, famous writers, and artists, mingled and talked. Ferdinand was a gracious host, charming and witty. He made sure every guest felt special. By bringing these influential people together under his roof, he was weaving his family into the very fabric of English high society. Each successful dinner party, each glowing review from a departing guest, was a small victory in his quest for acceptance. He even took great care with the gardens, designing them in the formal French style, with neat paths, colorful flower beds, and beautiful sculptures. A well-kept garden, like a fine art collection, was another mark of a truly established and refined family. It showed care, patience, and a deep appreciation for beauty, all qualities that were highly valued by the English aristocracy. For Ferdinand, Waddesdon Manor was an investment, not just in bricks and mortar, but in the future of his family. He hoped that by showcasing such incredible wealth, taste, and hospitality, any lingering prejudices against his Jewish heritage would melt away. He wanted his guests to see past his name or his family's origins and instead see him as a true English gentleman, a patron of the arts, and an important part of the country's elite. In many ways, Waddesdon became a stage where the Rothschilds performed their belonging. Every opulent room, every exquisite object, every perfectly planned garden path was a carefully chosen prop. Every invitation extended, every conversation held, every meal served was a line in a script designed to prove their worth. It was a tireless effort, a constant performance, all to secure a place in a society that didn't always welcome newcomers, especially those who were different. Ferdinand poured his energy into this grand project, hoping that the sheer brilliance of Waddesdon would illuminate his family's rightful place in England, finally allowing them to feel truly accepted and at home. He dreamed of a future where the name Rothschild was not whispered with prejudice, but spoken with respect and admiration, all thanks to the magnificent edifice he had brought to life. While Waddesdon Manor shone brightly, a dazzling beacon of wealth and acceptance, its polished surfaces and grand rooms hid some tougher truths. The very sparkle that Baron Ferdinand worked so hard to create often masked the less glamorous and sometimes unfair realities of life for very rich families in those days. It was a world of privilege, yes, but also one built on certain assumptions and hidden costs. One of the biggest hidden truths was how all that grandeur was actually made possible. The beautiful rooms, the sparkling silver, the endless delicious meals, none of it appeared by magic. It all depended on a vast army of servants. While the guests in the Rothschild family enjoyed their lavish lives upstairs, downstairs, and in the distant service wings, a different world entirely existed. This was a world of strict rules, long hours, and very little pay. The servants at Waddesdon, like those in many grand houses, lived a life of constant work. They woke before dawn to light fires, carry water, and prepare breakfast. Their days were spent cleaning, cooking, serving, mending, and running errands, often without a moment to sit down. They wore uniforms, spoke softly, and were expected to be almost invisible. Their own lives, their families, and their dreams were put aside to make the lives of the Rothschilds and their guests comfortable and seamless. It was a system that, while common at the time, relied on a deep divide between those who had everything and those who had very little. Another tough truth was about the money itself. While the Rothschilds seemed to have an endless supply, even great wealth could be shaky. The world of banking and finance was always changing. Wars, bad investments, or shifts in how countries did business could affect even the richest families. Ferdinand knew this. He understood that his family's money, while vast, wasn't something to be taken for granted. He had to be smart, careful, and always aware of what was happening in the world to protect their fortune. The beautiful art and grand house were symbols of stability, but underneath, there was always a quiet hum of worry, a need to keep growing and protecting what they had built. There was also the pressure that came with being so famous and so rich. Everyone watched the Rothschilds. What they wore, where they went, who they invited to their parties, it was all talked about. This meant Ferdinand and his family always had to be on. They couldn't just relax and be themselves. They had to constantly uphold their image, to play the part of the perfect, cultured, and accepted family. This was a heavy burden, adding to the stress of building and maintaining Waddesdon. Even the grand art collection, which was meant to show off their taste, came with its own set of worries. Ferdinand spent huge amounts of money buying these treasures. He had to make sure they were protected, insured, and displayed just right. The art was a source of pride, but also a huge responsibility. It was a constant reminder of the wealth he possessed and the expectations that came with it. So, while Waddesdon Manor was a dazzling spectacle, a dream made real, it also silently told another story. It spoke of the unseen labor that kept its grandeur alive, the quiet anxieties about wealth that never truly went away, and the constant pressure to maintain an image of perfection. The beauty on the surface was undeniable, but beneath it lay the complex and sometimes harsh realities of what it truly meant to be part of the old money world, even for a family like the Rothschilds who were trying to break into it. The manor was a mirror, reflecting not just the glitter, but also the shadows of its time. While the grand salons of Waddesdon Manor glittered with the finest art and echoed with the laughter of important guests, a completely different world hummed beneath the surface and in the quiet corners of the estate. This was the world of the servants, the many people whose tireless work made the Rothschilds' luxurious life possible. Their lives were a stark contrast to the opulence above, marked by long hours, strict rules, and demanding tasks. Imagine waking up long before the sun even thought of peeking over the horizon. For the scullery maids and kitchen staff, their day began in the chilly hours of morning. Fires needed lighting, water fetched and heated, and breakfast prepared for dozens of people. Not just the family and their guests, but for all the other servants too. A kitchen in a grand house like Waddesdon was a hive of activity, with huge stoves, mountains of pots and pans, and endless lists of food to prepare. The smells of roasting meats, fresh bread, and simmering sauces would fill the air, a constant symphony of flavors. Upstairs, the housemaids were already at work. They would move quietly through the grand rooms, dusting every priceless object, sweeping every inch of polished floor, and emptying chamber pots. They had to be silent, almost invisible, ensuring that when the family or guests awoke, everything was spotless and perfect. No speck of dust could be seen, no cushion out of place. It was a never-ending battle against dirt and disorder in a house so vast and filled with so many delicate things. The footmen, dressed in their smart uniforms, had a different set of duties. They served meals, carried messages, and helped guests with their luggage. They had to be polite, attentive, and always know their place. Being a footman meant standing for long hours, often through entire dinner parties, ready to attend to any need at a moment's notice. They were the face of the household to guests, representing the family's standards of service. Beyond the house, a whole team of outdoor staff worked in the extensive gardens and grounds. Gardeners tended to the elaborate flower beds, trimmed hedges, and kept the lawns immaculate. Stable hands looked after the horses, making sure they were fed, groomed, and ready for carriages. These were physically demanding jobs, often in all kinds of weather, ensuring the estate looked beautiful and ran smoothly. Life for these servants was incredibly structured. There were strict rules about when they woke, when they ate, and when they slept. They often lived in cramped quarters, far away from their own families. Their wages were low, and they had very little time off. Friendships among the staff were important, offering a sense of community and support in their demanding lives. They shared stories, dreams, and worries in the quiet moments they had together. While a few servants might have found opportunities to learn new skills or climb the ladder to a better position, for most, life was a cycle of hard work and obedience. They were essential cogs in the magnificent machine that was Waddesdon Manor, yet their contributions were rarely seen or appreciated by those outside their own world. Their stories often remain untold, hidden behind the glittering facade of the Rothschild family's grand design. Their presence, though mostly unseen by guests, was the very foundation upon which the manor's luxury was built, a constant, silent reminder of the human cost behind such immense grandeur. Their tireless efforts allowed Baron Ferdinand to achieve his dream of acceptance, but it came at a significant personal cost to them. Beyond the grand facade and the bustling lives of the servants, Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild carried his own set of burdens and dreams. His story wasn't just about building a house. It was about building an identity both for himself and for his family, in a world that often questioned their right to belong. He was a man of immense wealth and influence. Yet beneath the surface, he wrestled with complex feelings about who he was and what society expected of him. Ferdinand was born into one of the most powerful Jewish banking families in Europe. This brought incredible privilege, but also a unique set of challenges. In England, where he spent most of his adult life, being Jewish meant facing subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, forms of prejudice. Even with all his money and sophisticated taste, he could never fully shake off the feeling of being an other in the eyes of some of the old English aristocracy. Waddesdon Manor was his answer to this, a physical declaration of his family's place, but it didn't erase the internal struggle. He was a man caught between worlds. He deeply admired English culture, its traditions, and its way of life. He worked hard to fit in, to become the quintessential English gentleman. He spoke perfect English, dressed in the latest fashions, and developed a keen interest in English politics and country pursuits. Yet, he never forgot his family's roots, their Jewish heritage, which remained a core part of his identity. This balancing act, trying to honor both his past and his present, was a constant undercurrent in his life. Ferdinand also experienced personal heartbreak. He married his cousin, Evelina, whom he loved dearly. But their happiness was tragically short-lived. Evelina died after giving birth to their only child, a son, who also passed away shortly after. This immense loss profoundly affected Ferdinand. He never remarried and dedicated his life to his family, his art collection, and the creation of Waddesdon. The manor, in a way, became his child, a lasting monument to his vision and a way to channel his grief into something beautiful and enduring. The pressure to maintain the Rothschild family status was also a heavy weight. As a prominent member of such a famous family, he was always in the public eye. Every decision he made, every guest he invited, every piece of art he bought was scrutinized. He felt a deep responsibility to uphold the family name, to ensure their legacy of wealth, power, and philanthropy continued. This meant constantly working, managing his finances, and engaging in social and political life, even when he might have preferred a quieter existence. He was known for his sharp wit and charm, but also for a certain shyness. He preferred smaller, more intimate gatherings to huge crowds. He enjoyed spending time with his closest friends, discussing art, literature, and politics. These moments of quiet reflection were likely where he could truly be himself, away from the constant performance of being Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild. In his later years, Ferdinand often wrote about his life and his beloved Waddesdon. These writings reveal a man who was reflective, thoughtful, and perhaps a little lonely. He saw Waddesdon not just as a house, but as a creation, a testament to his life's work and his enduring desire to leave a mark. He knew that the world was changing and that the grand estates of his time might not last forever. His motivations for building Waddesdon were deeply personal, woven with threads of ambition, sorrow, cultural pride, and a profound yearning for a place where he and his family could finally feel truly, unequivocally accepted. The manor stood as a grand, silent witness to his complex inner world, a beautiful shell housing the story of a man's search for identity and belonging. Even with all the dazzling art, the grand parties, and the constant effort to appear perfectly established, a quiet worry often settled in the minds of the Rothschilds, the safety of their vast fortune. It might seem strange to think that one of the richest families in the world could ever worry about money, but wealth, especially immense wealth, brought its own unique set of fears and responsibilities. The Rothschilds' money came from banking, from making smart investments across different countries. This meant their fortune was tied to the health of the world's economies. If a war broke out, if a country's government fell, or if there was a big financial crisis, their money could be at risk. Ferdinand and his family were constantly watching the news, reading reports from their bankers in London, Paris, Vienna, and Frankfurt. They had to be sharp, predicting changes and making wise decisions to protect what they had. It wasn't enough to simply have money. They had to work hard to keep it and to make it grow. Think of it like a giant, delicate balancing act. The Rothschild family had invested in railways, mines, and governments all over the world. While these investments brought huge profits, they also meant their money was spread out and sometimes vulnerable. A political uprising in one country or a new law in another could cause big problems. Ferdinand, as a key member of the family, felt the weight of this responsibility. He wasn't just managing his own wealth, but contributing to the stability of the entire Rothschild banking empire. Building Waddesdon Manor itself was a huge expense, a constant drain on resources. While Ferdinand could afford it, the ongoing cost of maintaining such a grand estate was enormous. Imagine paying all those servants, keeping the electricity and heating running, looking after the vast gardens, and constantly repairing and upgrading such an enormous house. It was a never-ending financial commitment, a luxury that required constant vigilance to sustain. Every new art piece, every renovation, every lavish party added to the total. Beyond the practical money worries, there was also a deeper concern about the future. The Rothschilds knew that wealth could be fleeting. Families that were rich one generation could lose it all in the next if they weren't careful. They had a strong family tradition of working together, marrying cousins to keep their wealth and influence within the family, and teaching their children about finance from a young age. This wasn't just about greed. It was about survival and ensuring their families' standing for generations to come. Furthermore, being so wealthy also made them a target. People might be jealous or even resentful of their success. Governments might want to tax them heavily or even try to take some of their assets. This was a constant threat, especially as the 20th century approached and ideas about wealth and society began to change. The Rothschilds had to be very smart about how they presented themselves, using their money not just for lavish living, but also for good deeds like giving to charities, which helped improve their public image and protect their standing. So, while Waddesdon Manor stood as a monument to their incredible wealth, it also represented the ongoing effort and quiet anxieties behind that wealth. The beautiful facade of comfort and endless resources hid the constant work, the careful planning, and the underlying worries that even the richest families faced. For Baron Ferdinand, the manor was a symbol of security, but he knew, deep down, that true security for his family's fortune was a constant battle against the unpredictable forces of the world. The glittering world of Waddesdon was sustained by a complex web of financial decisions, political awareness, and a persistent drive to protect what had been built. The world that Baron Ferdinand knew, a world of grand balls and quiet anxieties about banking fortunes, began to shift dramatically after his passing. Waddesdon Manor, once a proud symbol of status and a carefully constructed shield against prejudice, found itself facing changes far greater than any Ferdinand could have imagined. The gentle hum of lavish parties and the busy whispers of servants gave way to the distant rumblings of war, forcing the magnificent estate to adapt and take on new roles. The first big change came with World War I, often called the Great War. Suddenly, the focus of England, and indeed all of Europe, was not on fancy houses or art collections, but on survival. Many of the young men who had once served at Waddesdon, either in the house or in the gardens, left to join the army. The lavish entertaining stopped, as resources were scarce and people's minds were on the battlefields. Waddesdon, like many large country homes, offered its space to the war effort. Parts of the manor were used to house soldiers, or sometimes even as a hospital or a place for women volunteers to help with war work. The priceless art collection, which Ferdinand had so carefully gathered, had to be packed away and hidden in safe places, protected from potential bombs or invaders. The house, usually bustling with life, became quieter, its grand rooms filled with a sense of waiting and worry. Then, just a few decades later, an even darker cloud gathered over Europe, World War II. This conflict brought even more profound changes. Air raids were a real threat to England, and the countryside became a safer place than the cities. Waddesdon Manor once again played its part. Its purpose completely changed from a private residence to a vital wartime hub. The manor's cellars, strong and deep, became a huge storage facility for precious art and treasures from other important places, including the royal family's own collections from Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle. Imagine priceless paintings and delicate porcelain, usually displayed for all to admire, carefully hidden away in the darkness, waiting for peace. Beyond storing treasures, Waddesdon also opened its doors to children who were evacuated from dangerous cities. These children, often scared and far from home, found a temporary refuge within the manor's grand walls. The elegant rooms that once hosted dukes and prime ministers now house bunk beds and the sounds of children playing. The stately gardens became places for growing vegetables to help feed the nation, instead of just being pretty to look at. This transformation was a huge departure from Ferdinand's original vision, but it showed the adaptability and resilience of the estate and its owners. During these war years, the Rothschild family themselves faced even greater dangers. Being a prominent Jewish family in Europe, they were acutely aware of the rising tide of anti-Semitism, especially from Nazi Germany. Their family branches across the continent faced terrible persecution. Waddesdon, in England, became a kind of anchor, a place of relative safety, though never truly free from worry. The wars changed not just the function of the house, but also the very meaning of belonging for the Rothschilds. Acceptance, which Ferdinand had so carefully sought through opulence, now meant survival. These major world wars stripped away some of the frivolous aspects of the manor, forcing it to become something more practical, more essential. It showed that even the grandest symbols of wealth could be repurposed for the greater good in times of crisis. Waddesdon was no longer just a display of status. It became a shelter, a storehouse, and a testament to endurance. These changing times profoundly altered the estate's journey, setting the stage for its next transformation and a deeper understanding of its complex history. As the world plunged into the horrors of the 20th century, Waddesdon Manor, once a grand stage for social ambition, transformed into something far more vital, a haven. The rising tides of war and, more frighteningly, a growing wave of anti-Semitism turned the manor into a quiet, strong place of safety, not just for the Rothschild family, but for others too. During World War II, when bombs rained down on London and other British cities, many parents made the heartbreaking decision to send their children to the countryside, hoping to keep them safe. Waddesdon Manor, with its strong walls and peaceful location, opened its doors to these evacuated children. Imagine children, used to city streets, suddenly finding themselves in a sprawling manor with grand rooms and vast gardens. They might have been scared and confused at first, but Waddesdon offered them a temporary home, a place where they could sleep without fear of air raids and play in the fresh air. The elegant dining rooms that once saw formal dinners now heard the chatter and laughter of many young voices. This was a profound change. turning a symbol of luxury into a place of warmth and protection for those in need. Beyond sheltering children, Waddesdon also played a crucial role in protecting Britain's national treasures. As the threat of invasion loomed, and bombs could strike anywhere, precious artworks and important historical items were moved from museums and royal palaces to safer locations. The deep, strong cellars and hidden rooms of Waddesdon Manor became a secret vault. Priceless paintings, ancient manuscripts, and delicate sculptures from places like Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle were carefully brought to Waddesdon. They were stored in the darkness, away from danger, waiting for the day when they could be safely returned to public view. The manor, built to display beauty, now hid it, safeguarding the nation's heritage. For the Rothschild family themselves, Waddesdon's role as a safe place was even more personal. As a Jewish family with branches across Europe, they were painfully aware of the escalating anti-Semitism under the Nazi regime. Family members on the continent faced grave dangers, and many lost their lives or their homes. Waddesdon, in England, became a beacon of security. While no place was entirely safe during wartime, England offered a refuge, and the manor represented a steadfast home amidst the chaos. It was a place where family members could gather, find some peace, and plan for the future, even as the world around them seemed to be falling apart. The very idea of belonging that. After the tumult of the World Wars, Waddesdon Manor faced another profound change, one that would redefine its very existence. The era of grand private estates, maintained by armies of servants for the exclusive enjoyment of wealthy families, was slowly coming to an end. The world had changed too much. The costs of upkeep were enormous, and society's attitudes towards immense private wealth were shifting. It was no longer a time for hidden treasures. It was a time for sharing. Baron Ferdinand had, in his will, left Waddesdon to his sister Alice, and then to his great-nephew, James de Rothschild. James and his wife, Dorothy, continued to live at Waddesdon and loved it dearly. They had seen the manor through 2 world wars, witnessing its transformation from a luxurious home to a place of refuge and national importance. They understood that such a magnificent place, with its priceless art and rich history, was perhaps too important to remain purely private. James de Rothschild, who passed away in 1957, made a remarkable decision in his will. He decided to leave Waddesdon Manor, its vast art collection, and its beautiful gardens to the National Trust. The National Trust is a charity in England that looks after special places, making sure they are preserved for everyone to enjoy. This was a monumental gift, a turning point for Waddesdon. It meant that the manor would no longer be a private family home, but a public heritage site, open for all to visit and appreciate. This transition was a huge undertaking. The National Trust, working closely with the Rothschild family, had to transform a lived-in house into a museum that could welcome thousands of visitors. This meant careful planning. How would people move through the rooms? How would the precious art be protected while still being visible? How would the stories of the manor and its past residents be told to a new audience? The family played a crucial role in this process. Dorothy de Rothschild, James's widow, dedicated herself to making sure Waddesdon's transition was successful. She worked tirelessly, overseeing the preservation of the collections, the restoration of rooms, and the development of visitor facilities. Her love for Waddesdon and her commitment to its future were immense. She wanted to ensure that the public could experience the beauty and history that had been so central to her family's life. Opening Waddesdon to the public meant that the hidden problems and the tough truths that once lay beneath its glittering surface would eventually come to light. As a public institution, Waddesdon would become a place of learning and discovery. Visitors wouldn't just marvel at the beautiful things. They would also learn about the people who built it, the servants who maintained it, and the complex history of the Rothschild family. This new role as a public heritage site encouraged a deeper, more honest look at its past. The change from a private residence to a public museum was more than just a legal handover. It was a shift in purpose. Ferdinand had built Waddesdon to declare his family's importance and belonging. Now, It would declare the importance of art, history, and shared heritage for an entire nation. It moved from being a symbol of one family's ambition to a shared treasure, a place where everyone could connect with the past and understand a significant chapter of English history. This new chapter for Waddesdon meant that its story, once held within private walls, would now be told and retold, touching countless lives. It was a fitting evolution for a place that had already seen so many transformations. When Waddesdon Manor became a public place, something wonderful began to happen. New discoveries about its past started to emerge. No longer just a grand house for a wealthy family, it became a living museum, a place for research, and a home for untold stories. People began to look beyond the glittering objects and the famous names, seeking out the hidden histories that had always been there, just out of sight. One of the most important new areas of discovery focused on the many people who worked at Waddesdon. For a long time, the stories of the servants were mostly silent. They were the invisible army who kept the manor running, but their lives, their struggles, and their contributions were rarely written about or celebrated. With Waddesdon now open to everyone, there was a growing desire to understand the full picture, to hear the voices from below stairs as well as above. Researchers started digging into old records. They looked at payroll books, letters, and even old photographs. They found out names, ages, and where the servants came from. They learned about their daily routines, the strict rules they lived by, and the tiny wages they earned. These discoveries helped paint a clearer picture of what life was truly like for the housemaids, footmen, cooks, gardeners, and stable hands who dedicated their lives to Waddesdon. For example, they learned about the hierarchy of the servants, like a ladder from the lowliest scullery made to the powerful housekeeper and butler. Each person had a specific job and a specific place. They discovered that many servants came from poor families in the surrounding villages, seeing service in a grand house as one of the few ways to earn a living, even if it meant long hours and little freedom. Some stayed for many years, becoming almost part of the Waddesdon family in their own way, while others moved on, seeking better opportunities. These discoveries also helped visitors to the manor understand the true cost of the Rothschilds' luxurious lifestyle. When people walk through the grand rooms today, they can learn not just about the beautiful furniture, but also about the hands that polished it every day. They can imagine the busy kitchens where meals were prepared, not just the elegant dining tables where they were served. This adds a whole new layer of understanding to the manor, making its history richer and more human. Beyond the servants, new research also shed light on other aspects of Waddesdon's past. Experts studied the art collection with fresh eyes, discovering more about where the pieces came from, who made them, and how Ferdinand acquired them. They delved deeper into the architecture of the house, understanding the clever ways it was built and the challenges faced by the original builders. Even the gardens, with their intricate designs, revealed new secrets about their creation and evolution over time. This commitment to new discoveries means that Waddesdon is not just a static old house, but a place that continues to grow and reveal itself. It encourages people to ask questions, to look closer, and to think critically about history. By bringing the stories of the forgotten workers to the forefront, Waddesdon Manor embraces a more complete and honest telling of its past. It shows that history is not just about the famous and the powerful, but about everyone whose lives touched a place, even those who lived and worked in the shadows. This ongoing journey of discovery makes Waddesdon a truly special place, constantly inviting us to learn more. As we've journeyed through the story of Waddesdon Manor, from its grand beginnings to its modern role as a public treasure, it becomes clear that this magnificent place is more than just a beautiful house. It's like a special mirror, reflecting deep ideas about what it means to be very rich, how people try to find their place in the world, and what fancy things truly cost. Looking back at its long and winding path helps us understand these big ideas. First, Waddesdon shows us a lot about being rich. Baron Ferdinand built it with a huge amount of money, using it to collect the best art and create a dazzling home. This tells us that wealth can buy incredible beauty and comfort. But the manor also reminds us that even with all that money, there can be worries. The Rothschilds, despite their fortune, had to work hard to protect it from changing times and world events. Their wealth also came with big responsibilities, like keeping the family name strong and looking after the estate. So, being rich isn't just about having lots of things. It's also about managing big challenges and constant pressures. Then, there's the story of finding your place. Ferdinand built Waddesdon not just as a home, but as a way for his Jewish family to feel truly accepted in English society. He wanted the house to say, "We belong here. We are important." This tells us that sometimes people use big displays of wealth or achievement to fit in, especially when they feel like outsiders. Waddesdon was his attempt to overcome prejudice and earn respect. The manor's journey, from a symbol of status to a refuge during wartime, shows how the meaning of belonging can change drastically with the world around you. Sometimes belonging means being invited to fancy parties, and other times it means finding safety from danger. Finally, Waddesdon Manor makes us think about the real cost of fancy things. When we see the beautiful rooms and sparkling treasures, it's easy to forget that a huge amount of effort and resources went into creating and maintaining them. The hidden stories of the servants who worked long, hard hours for little pay remind us of the human cost behind such grandeur. Their tireless work made the Rothschilds' luxurious life possible, yet their lives were often very different from those they served. This shows us that the beauty on the surface can sometimes hide unfairness and inequality. Waddesdon also teaches us about change and adaptability. It started as one man's grand dream, then became a wartime haven, and finally, a public museum. This long journey shows that even the grandest buildings can change their purpose and find new ways to be important. It tells us that history is not fixed. It's always being understood in new ways, especially as we learn more about all the people involved. In the end, Waddesdon Manor is a powerful reminder that history is complex. It's not just about one story or one family. It's about layers of experiences, the dreams of the rich, the struggles of the workers, the impact of world events, and the constant search for identity and acceptance. When we visit Waddesdon today, we don't just see a beautiful house. We see a reflection of these deep human experiences, inviting us to think about our own place in the world and the costs and meanings behind the grand things we build. It stands as a silent teacher, helping us understand the many sides of wealth, belonging, and the human spirit across different times.